Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call our committee meeting to order. This is the 24th meeting of the Emergency Preparedness and Protective Services Committee of this term of council. It's good to see everyone for our late May meeting. And I'd like to begin with a roll call, please. So I'll turn to the committee coordinator.
Councillor Bradley.
Here.
Conseiller Desroches.
Here.
Councillor Dudas.
Present.
Councillor Devine.
Here.
Councillor Hubley.
Here.
Councillor Johnson.
Here.
Councillor Kelly.
Present.
Councillor Luloff.
Morning.
Conseillère Plante.
Hello.
Councillor Skalski.
Here.
Vice Chair Hill.
Present.
Chair Brockington.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have quorum.
We have perfect attendance. That's what we have. So gold star for everyone. Thank you so much, colleagues. Good to see you all. The city of Ottawa is located on the unceded, never surrendered territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe First Nations people. They have been inhabitants and stewards of these lands for millennia, and we honor and we recognize them. Before we jump into the business of today's committee meeting, just a few comments from the chair's seat. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that last week marked Paramedic Services Week in Canada. This week recognizes the life-saving work of emergency medical personnel and highlights their critical contributions to public safety, as well as their evolving and integrated role in community healthcare. On Thursday, May 21st, the city raised the Ottawa Paramedic Service flag in recognition of the service's contributions. I know I speak on behalf of my colleagues on this committee and council when I say we are truly proud of the exemplary service demonstrated by the Ottawa Paramedic Service. So Chief Poirier, please share our thoughts and comments with the service. As an example of this exemplary service, this was recognized earlier this week when the province of Ontario announced this year's recipients of the Ontario Medal for Paramedic Bravery. These medals honor paramedics who have performed acts of exceptional courage, and I'm very pleased to share and recognize two City of Ottawa paramedics who received this honor. Advanced Care Paramedic Francois Jacques and Primary Care Paramedic Stephen Welsh from the Ottawa Paramedic Services were recognized for their actions on October 18th, 2025, when they responded to a call where two people were being attacked by an aggressive dog. The dog had inflicted severe injuries to wounded individuals and was posing an active threat to both people and first responders. Thinking quickly and with no animal control equipment available, Paramedic Welsh worked to physically restrain the dog while Paramedic Jacques extracted the individuals from the apartment. It later took 6 officers to safely remove the dog from the apartment, indicating the extraordinary level of danger the paramedics faced. The survival of the victims can be attributed to Paramedic Welsh and Paramedic Jacques' bravery and decisiveness. As an additional note, it is Paramedic Welsh's second bravery award, and he is the first ever recipient in Ontario to receive this honor twice. So congratulations to these two exemplary individuals. Please join me in honoring them for this exceptional work. And before we begin our formal proceedings, I would like to recognize our new Chief of Bylaw and Regulatory Services, Jake Gravel, who's with us today. He's been with us for a while, but in the seat as our new director. So welcome. Jake is well known to all committee members, and we congratulate him on assuming the new role. So well done, Chief. Great to see you. Okay, those are my opening remarks. Thank you, colleagues, for allowing me to share the good news with you. Okay, do we have any declarations of interest this morning? Seeing no hands waving at me, we have 2 sets of minutes to approve today. The first is from our 23rd meeting held on April 16th, 2026. Are those minutes carried? Thank you. The second set was our joint committee meeting with our friends at the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee. That was the bubble bylaw debate, if I remember correctly, held on Friday, April 17th, 2026. Are those minutes carried as well?
Carried.
Thank you, my colleagues. Okay, we have two responses to inquiries. The first is on the lithium battery fires, and the second was with respect to the HVAC system at the Talisman Apartments in Carling. Would anyone like to hold either of these items? Vice Chair Hill?
Yes, if we could hold the lithium ion battery IPD, and I have a motion that I'd like to submit for that as well.
Okay, so we'll get to that in just 1 second. We'll get through the agenda. Anyone want to hold the Talisman item? Seeing no hands, that's fine. So that we'll receive that one. Item 5 is from the Ottawa Fire Service, the 2025 annual report. There is a presentation and one delegation, so we will hold that matter. And item 6 is a councillor's report from Councillor Plant, strengthening protections against construction encroachment and enforcing committee and adjustment conditions. There is a revised motion that the councillor will put on the floor, and we have some delegations for that matter, so that matter will be held as well. So those are the substantial items of business that we will cover this morning. So we'll go back to the first inquiry response, the lithium batteries. So first, Vice Chair Hill, if you would move the procedural matter to lift this item, and then we'll deal straight with your motion. Go ahead, please.
That pursuant to subsection 89A of the procedure bylaw, being bylaw number 2025-100, the Emergency Preparedness and Protective Services Committee approve that the rules of procedure be suspended to allow for consideration of the item listed as response to inquiry 4.1 EPPSC 2026-01 lithium battery fires.
Thank you for that. Colleagues, is that carried? Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Councillor. You said you had a motion on this matter, and I believe it was circulated in advance.
Yes, whereas the Ottawa Fire Services tracks incidents involving lithium ion battery fires with 19 incidents recorded in 2024, 25, and 2025, and 10 reported to date in 2026. And over the past 2 years, as reported to the Ontario Fire Marshal, these fires accounted for approximately 1.5% annually of all fires in the city. Whereas the Ottawa Fire Service continues to monitor these trends to inform fire safety guidance and has the operational expertise to respond to incidents involving lithium-ion batteries, but does not have the authority to regulate their manufacture, distribution, or use within the community to the extent of senior levels of government. Whereas the City of Ottawa currently has no specific municipal regulations governing the storage or charging of lithium-ion batteries used in devices such as e-scooters or similar micromobility devices, and municipalities would benefit from consistent province-wide standards to ensure clarity, enforceability, and public safety. Whereas the regulation of the manufacture, importation, and sale of lithium-ion batteries and related devices falls under the jurisdiction of the Government of Canada, while the Province of Ontario has jurisdiction over fire safety requirements, including indoor storage and charging, through the Ontario Fire Code, which does not currently contain specific provisions addressing the unique risks associated with lithium-ion batteries. Whereas Ottawa City Council supports the review and development of clear enforceable provisions within the Ontario Fire Code addressing the indoor storage and charging of lithium-ion batteries, specifically those used in micromobility devices, scooters, e-bikes, etc. Therefore, be it resolved that Emergency Preparedness and Protective Services Committee recommend that City Council express its support for the inclusion of regulation on indoor storage and charging of lithium-ion batteries through the Ontario Fire Code. Be it further resolved that the City Clerk be directed to share a copy of this motion with the Premier of Ontario, the Ontario Fire Marshal, and the Ontario Minister of the Solicitor General on behalf of the City Council.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And do you have any introductory words at this time?
No, not at this time. I would offer to perhaps Chief Hutt, if he wished to amplify any specifics from the Ottawa Fire Service perspective. And then should there be debate, I'm happy to close.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Vice Chair, for moving that. So any comments from our General Manager or Chief Hutt?
Good morning, Chair. Thank you for that question. This is a case where technology is advancing so quickly and the legislation is not keeping up with it. Certainly lithium-ion batteries is an issue not only in Ottawa, it's an issue across Ontario, it's across the nation. We're hearing from services about the situations that occur. So a localized regulation or bylaw is, in my mind, is not appropriate. This has to come from a provincial under the Ontario Fire Code. So Fire Services certainly does support the motion that was presented today. I think any backing or support to have regulations in the Fire Code and in particular, it's about the storage of e-scooters, e-bikes within residential area and residential dwelling units. There has to be aspects where they can't be kept in dwelling units. Unfortunately, we see the numbers increasing, and recently this year we've had one fire with 2 fatalities as a result of an e-bike with thermal runaway in a residential dwelling setting. So we certainly support this motion and welcome the support from committee and council.
Excellent. Thank you, Chief. Any questions, colleagues, on this matter? Seeing none, then is Vice Chair Hill's motion carried?
Carried.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Vice Chair Hill, for moving that. Next, we'll move to item 5, which is the Ottawa Fire Services 2025 Annual Report. Presenting today, we have Ryan Pro, our General Manager, Paul Hutt, Fire Chief, Dave Andre, Deputy Fire Chief, and colleagues, I'll flag we have one speaker or delegate who has registered to speak on this item, and we have not received any written submissions for this item. So I'll turn it over to our General Manager. Good morning.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning, members of the committee. I'll hand it over to Chief Hutt and Deputy Chief Andre, who have a presentation to give this morning about our annual report that provides some performance data with respect to 2025. I'm extremely proud of the work of our Ottawa Fire Services that they continue to provide to the community, and I think the report really reflects some of those great strides that the service has been making. So I'll hand it over to Chief Hutt.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Chair, members of committee. As indicated, I have Deputy Chief Dave Andre with me today, and we're very pleased to present our 2025 annual report. We do believe it's a good news story all around. Next slide. Oh, no, that's good. Thank you. So why are we here today? Under the establishing a regulatory bylaw, we have a commitment to report to committee and council annually, talking about service delivery and other aspects. And a recommendation will be before committee recommending that council receive the 2025 Fire Service Annual Report for information. Next slide, please. Just at a high level, Ottawa Fire Service operating budget is 1.2 million. I don't need to share with the committee members the uniqueness of the size and the geographic area that we have to respond and the uniqueness of that. Full-time and part-time, as you recall, our volunteers were reclassified as part-time members. We have approximately 1,500 staff and we operate out of 45 stations. Next slide, please. The report summarizes our delivery model. We have operations and special operations. So those are like our technical rescue types of calls. Community standards and communications, that's our fire dispatch and fire prevention. Training, safety, and wellness division. We have a capital assets, which looks after a lot of our apparatus and facilities. And then we have operational support, rostering, records management that supports all the operations of the Ottawa Fire Service. Next slide, please. When it comes to recruitment and equity initiatives, actually very excited to share with committee today. We ran full-time classes as well as part-time classes this year. Our ambassador program, we've talked for a number of years about creating a bursary program for situations where there's barriers within certain parts of our community. And becoming a firefighter not only in Ottawa, but across the province, there's certification requirements for people to apply. And we recognized that was a barrier. So we talked about creating a bursary program, and we partnered with the Integrated Neighborhood Service Team, the African, Caribbean, and Black Wellness Resource Center. And astonishing, the first year we had 81 people register for an information session, 41 actually attended the session, 34 people applied, 23 were eligible, 16 people proceeded with written responses as to why they wanted the bursary program. We did 9 interviews, and we selected 4 candidates out of that initiative that are in our Ottawa Fire Service part-time recruit program. And at the end of it, they'll obtain their firefighter certifications, firefighter 1, firefighter 2, necessary to apply to become a firefighter. Costs associated with that, there's a number of vehicles where you can get your certification, community college, private fire institutes. For the most part, it can range anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000. So this has been extremely successful for our program. Next slide, please. When we look at our 2025 performance standards, when we say call volume, not to get confused with our responses, but those are calls to Ottawa Fire Service and our communication center. We've seen a 9% increase. Our incident volume, those are our responses. We've seen a slight increase of 1%, and a lot of that has to do, which I believe is a successful false fire alarm strategy, and I'll explain that in a future slide. We have seen an increase in 2025 with fires, and at a moderate risk pertaining to residential and townhouse fires. So that's certainly something that our service is tracking. For false fire alarms, we've seen a 2% increase, and we distinguish the difference between nuisance of fire alarms, which is part of our false fire alarm strategy. We're actually holding that at an abeyance, where normally we would see an 11% increase on that call type. So we're very, very successful with our false fire alarm strategy right now. We have seen a decrease of 12% in our medical related calls, and I think a lot of that is contributed to the new dispatch system, that paramedic service, and how they classify their calls. And again, I want to compliment the Ottawa Paramedic Service with their Byward Market paramedic program, because our busiest station, which is 13, has seen a decrease in those calls, and a lot of it is because of that early interventions from those dedicated resources there. Hazardous materials, we're seeing a 26% increase. Majority of those calls were related to CO related calls, significant buildings that had not your regular residential homes, but larger buildings with carbon monoxide calls that we responded to in 2025. And our technical rescue calls, we've seen an increase in 12%. Next slide, please. So at a snapshot, there's different risks that we have to monitor. There's high risk, medium risk, and then there's low risk. On average, within our response standards, we evaluate the moderate risks, because that represents 90% plus of the risks that we face every day. And from a full-time perspective, when we say first on scene, that's our standard is having an apparatus on scene within 6 minutes and 44 seconds. We're meeting those thresholds. I will just flag, and it's certainly not it's something that we'll be tracking, and there's no knee-jerk reaction as a result of this, but our part-time first on scene, there's a little bit of a threshold. So we didn't meet that benchmark. We were slightly over. But when you dug into the granular details of those 55 calls, there was 3 anomaly calls that as a result of long travel times and travel distance for those calls. So easily explained, but that's certainly something we'll just monitor moving forward. And then when we talk about effective response force for moderate risk, that's having 16 firefighters on scene to do that critical tasking, and both for the full-time and part-time side, we're meeting those thresholds. Next slide, please. And I'll pass this over to Chief Andre.
Merci, Chef Hutt. Donc, croissance et perfectionnement.
Thank you, Chief Hutt. Growth and development. We've opened the fire station in Stittsville, 81. We've added full-time personnel and part-time staff. That's an investment to reinforce the services to Stittsville. 2025 station location study, we've identified the need to open a full-time station in Manotick. It should be done in 27-28 according to the budget process. Same thing for the Greeley Station 93 in 2030-32 based on annual budget process, ongoing assessments of future neighborhood planning. There's a lot of growth in Tuin and Bowesville.
Thank you. Highlighted earlier, just the false fire alarm update. And when we talk about nuisance, just to remind committee members that those are alarms where there's companies that fail to notify, so we respond and they're either testing their system. So it's really taking us out of service, responding to these nuisance fire alarms. And the other is just malfunctioning alarms that just aren't being updated and restored and modified the way they need. And again, very positive news story here that out of this program in 2025, we issued close to 3,000 either warning letters or invoices for various deficiencies. We've stabilized to 0.4%. And again, I mentioned this again, is that normally we would see an increase of 11% on this call type from 2023, 2024. So we certainly are trending in the right direction. And I think when you look at potential efficiencies of all our alarm calls, not just nuisance, but all our alarm calls, 0.6% end up being some type of fire related. So we as a fire service leadership team believe there's opportunities to look at how we're responding to those calls moving forward. And that's something that we'll discuss in future presentations. Next slide, please. So the training center, this remains a high priority for Ottawa Fire Service. We're working closely with the strategic initiatives and the finance division, just looking at a model that's going to be sustainable. We know this is a project that's going to take several years, so we're looking at what a sustainable funding model will look like. We currently have a number of consultants retained right now looking at engineering data sites, which might be appropriate for our new training center. So lots of work with our new training center and hope to have more in the near future on that for committee. Next slide, please.
Principale intervention d'urgence.
Emergency responses. There's February 26, where we had the technical response that with a garage that fell down on Laurier Street. The night before, somebody had said there were problems with the structure, so there was nobody in there. We had emptied. There was nobody, no physical person. Then in April 1st, there was a fire with a wood structure. May 28th, we had a USAR in Brockville. Somebody who was stuck underneath a piece of concrete on a construction site, and we worked hard to save their life. July 31st, emergency response and extrication during a plane crash. It was close to the airport. We came first. We helped to take a person out, and unfortunately, another one was deceased.
Thank you. As we conclude our presentation, just to look back, with the support of this committee and council, in 2025, we hired 22 full-time firefighters for the Stittsville transition from a rural to a composite model. We reduced the number of false fire alarms that we were responding to. We have great initiatives with equity through recruitment and hiring right now. We did receive $750,000 for cancer prevention for the wellness of our members. And we did solidify a 5-year contract with the association. Looking forward, we have a lot of work with our station location study. We're already planning renovations for the Manotick station in Station 94, and then further renovations for the Greeley station in 2030. We have a lot of work going on with the new training center and ongoing improvements from staff and well-being. That's always a priority for our leadership team. And that next slide, that concludes our presentation, and welcome questions from committee members.
Thank you very much to our panel for the presentation today, and just want to recognize the great work of the Ottawa Fire Service, all personnel, not just firefighters, but to all the logistical and support staff. the entire team that make up the Ottawa Fire Services and serve our residents on a daily basis. The call volume is staggering, the number of calls. I appreciate how it's broken down. And you provide the committee with the types of calls that you're responding to, but just my sincere appreciation on behalf of the committee to the Ottawa Fire Service. Thank you very much. As I mentioned at the beginning, we have one delegate today to address the annual report, Mr. James Scott McKellop. Sir, if you'd please come up. No stranger to providing delegation, so you have up to 5 minutes, and at the 1 minute mark, I'll let you know you have 1 minute.
Good morning. APX data analytics utilized by Ottawa Fire Services for smart everything everywhere. Slide two. Ottawa Fire Services go live with APX data. APX software has proven to be the easiest, fastest, and most effective method to transform fire departments to have digital data available and shareable instantly. Interactive pre-incident plan data. Any device offers real-time views into buildings and city assets. It helps responders identify occupancy, risk, hazards to allegedly help save lives. Slide three. APX data fire rescue systems include APX Smart Capture, Smart Inspect, Smart Map, and Smart View. Slide four. Unlocking next generation data for fire departments. APX data and OPS Central have partnered to deliver access and display the most critical urban data possible. Both companies are leaders in aggregating data from a wide range of sources, such as IoT sensors, surveillance cameras, drones, building info, and weather conditions for fire departments. Slide five. In 2011, APX launched Cityscape, which currently serves thousands of fire departments throughout North America. Slide six. EFI Engineering Services integrates advanced electrical tech to support a wide range of applications in Ottawa, including manufacturing plants, office buildings, hospitals, and data centers. Slide seven. Key services include SCADA programming and industrial automation, lighting and fire alarm and electrical safety systems. Slide eight. Fire alarm to SCADA integration. Fire alarm panels are the hub of detection systems, allowing to monitor inputs and outputs and relay vital information, connecting all fire-related devices to a SCADA network. Or building management systems add visibility and insight into status of fire detection systems. Slide nine. IEC Safety in the Future. Digital twins offer a framework for testing safety practice, simulating fires and explosives virtually, and deploying tested materials in the simulation. Newly developed tech will revolutionize the digital environment, which the interaction of humans, machines, and ICT systems forms the basis of a tripartite system for safety. Slide 10. Tripartite system for safety in the human-machine environment. Slide 11. The human represents individuals performing a task. The machine represents a machine, robot, or electronic tool equipped with machine intelligence or an elaborate control system. The environment represents a computer. Slide 12. These can be electronic monitoring systems or edge nodes in the workplace, SCADA systems in a factory setting, or even cloud-based services. Slide 13. Meet Francois Collet, member of the IEC and ISO and Standards Council of Canada. He's responsible for international standards surrounding IoT, digital twins for the biodigital convergence. Slide 14. ISO IEC definition of IoT, infrastructure of interconnected entities, people, systems, and info resources together with services, with processes and reacts to info from a physical and virtual world. Slide 15. IoT is a system concept that uses many technologies from networking and digital twins to cloud computing, big data, and AI. Slide 16. IT-OT convergence is the integration of information tech used for data-centric computing with operational tech used to monitor events, processes, and devices. Slide 17. IT and OT convergence, a view just like to point out SCADA in the center of the 5-layer architecture. Slide 18. IoT systems are key enablers of smart everything everywhere. Slide 19, including smart society, smart payments, smart buildings, smart healthcare, smart transport, smart energy, and smart territory improvement. Slide 20, IEC digital twins. Slide 21, digital twin and brief. Digital twin is a digital representation of real world entity or system. Digital twin is based on a massive real-time, real-world data measurements. It's an array of dimensions. Digital twin is also an enabler of smart everything everywhere. Slide 22.
1 minute.
Meet Jean-Francois Dion, The City of Ottawa, working on Ottawa's digital twins. Slide 23, meet Randall Roger, Program Manager at GATS. Slide 24, the Geospatial Analytics Technology Solutions team in collaboration with GeoSolutions launched the O-Twin Viewer. This allows city staff to explore and analyze buildings, roads, and underground infrastructure and more. Slide 25. The O-Twin is more than a tech platform. It's a strategic tool that pretends to improve transparency. Slide 26, geospatial AI with geospatial data to unlock insights and drive smart decision-making. Slide 27. This is all part of the biodigital convergence, a 20-year-old concept, also known as the nano-bio-info-cogno experiment. Nano for nanotech, bio for biotech, info for information tech, including advanced computing, cogno for cognitive science. My concerns, why aren't Ottawa residents properly informed? I'll end this with a Albert Camus quote. The welfare of the people has always been the alibi of tyrants, and it provides further advantage of giving the good servants of tyranny a good conscience. Thank you.
Button, please. Before you go, please come back. There are hands up, so I'll just see Councillor Hubley, Devine, Kelly, are you have a question for the delegate or for staff?
No, it's for staff, Chair.
Staff, okay. Any questions then for our delegate today? No. Before you go, I'll just say this. My office, the fire chief's office, and the city clerk's office reviewed your presentation in advance of today's committee meeting. And it was communicated to you in writing that your presentation did not adhere to the agenda item that we are now discussing, which is the annual report of the fire service. So in the future, and to back up, you also use the logo of the Ottawa Fire Service in your presentation, which is not permitted without permission. So in the future, you need to ask permission of the Ottawa Fire Service or any other service whose logo you're going to use. And you also profiled a City of Ottawa employee who I believe was without permission in your presentation. You need permission before you do those types of things. So in the future, sir, if your presentation does not adhere to the agenda item that we are speaking, you will not be permitted to delegate. The clerk's office and my office will follow up with you after today's meeting in writing to explain what I've just explained to you today.
I'd like to reply to that. My presentation was 100% on topic. Your thing brought up the data so much in your report of all the data you're collecting. It also brought up geospatial information systems. So, and like the claim it's off topic, you're wrong. And you actually know that. Just because you're hiding the technologies from Ottawa residents, like you clearly state in your report that you're collecting this data.
Not a question.
I'm just telling you what you're using to collect that data. Thank you.
You will not be permitted to delegate in the future. Thank you. Okay, now we have questions for staff. So colleagues, I see Councillor Hubley, Devine, and Kelly. Councillor Hubley.
Thank you, Chair, for taking care of that. That was interesting. I'll use that word. What I want to say to staff was the fire report was excellent. The service that they provide our communities is excellent. What I want to highlight is what they do over and above, what the fire service does over and above their regular duties. The amount of times that we're at community events, I think every councillor's experienced this, and firefighters are there to help, whether it's for CHEO, for Youth Services Bureau, for any community event, there always seems to be firefighters out there lending a hand, and I think they need a shout out for that. So that's what I'm going to say with my statement. Thank you, Chair.
Excellent words, Councillor Hubley. Thank you very much for sharing that. Appreciate it. Councillor Devine and then Kelly. Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Chair. I want to, echo what my colleague, Councillor Hubley, said there. Not only is this another fantastic report, but in my community as well, it's always quite welcome to see OFS come out to community events. So yeah, a few questions and comments to staff. So I was very happy in your report to see the decrease in false alarm. I remember the meeting 2 or 3 years ago when you announced the campaign to decrease false alarms, and that was some good progress there. The question I wanted to ask, and I'm not sure if it was in the report itself, but as a means of continuing to support your strategy to address this, Is there any way, are you able to monetize how much has been saved in terms of staff time, deployment of resources through this strategy? Clearly, you've made progress on it, but is there a way to put a dollar value on the improvements?
Chair, thank you for that question. I don't have that information today, Councillor, but certainly something we could look for future consideration for that. But I think end of the day, without putting a dollar value to it, it's the response readiness where in general, instead of having trucks responding to nuisance alarms, we're actually able to respond and meet our standards in a quicker fashion because we're ready for the true emergencies. And that was the overall overarching issue or item that we tried to achieve with this false fire alarm strategy bylaw.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And I certainly do not need you to do any work on trying to put a dollar value on it. But your point is even stronger in how you're able to best meet your response times. The next item I wanted to touch on, in your annual report, you talked about a 26% spike in hazmat related calls. And I think I heard you say in your report that a lot of this was related to CO, carbon monoxide calls. So I don't know how significant that 26% spike is, but it makes me think back on the conversation we had a few years ago about false alarms and whether or not this is a significant matter that needs some kind of concentrated attention. Could you perhaps just provide a little bit more insight on what is behind that 26% spike? How much does that take up in terms of resources? Is there something to be concerned about? And is there a strategy to address it?
Chair, thank you. When you looked at the hazmat related calls in general, we respond about to 15 to 1,600 calls a year. So that number's low. So whenever there is an increase, that percentage looks high. But regardless of all that, what we did have last year in 2025, we had an incident where there was a propane truck that rolled over, and we had numerous resources responded to that as a result of that incident. So that was one of the anomalies. But then when we going just back to the CO, it's that continuous education that our fire prevention, and so we talk about programs, our fire prevention program is very active, and it's also after the fire. It doesn't necessarily have to be a fire. It's after any incident where if we think we need to follow up from a fire prevention perspective to educate about, carbon monoxide, carbon in residential dwellings, what's the law when it comes to alarms and detection systems. I think some of these items, what we experienced in 2025 were highly occupied or very intensified residential high rises. And one last year actually was a hotel that had mechanical failure resulting in us responding. So, it's one of those things that we'll continue to monitor and certainly be on high of our list from a fire prevention education perspective.
Thank you. And in looking at the numbers, I can see that, hazmat doesn't make up a whole lot of your calls. And so I can see how a small bump there might look like a huge spike overall, but it's not. Now, onto the topic of your rescue calls, which from the numbers, that's a larger percentage of the calls you make, and you had a 12% spike in rescue calls. Would vehicle collisions fall? When you guys respond to vehicle collisions, would that fall within rescue calls?
No, unless it was classified as an extrication call. But for the most part, this is our technical rescue. So it's rope rescue. Water rescue is one that we continually monitor for sure, which is a high contributor to that number. Trench rescue, collapse, confined space. So it's those types of calls that fall within that category.
Okay, so I'm not sure where vehicle collisions would fall within your reporting. I know that as first responders, Ottawa Fire Service does respond to vehicle collisions. So we just had a pretty concerning meeting a month or so ago with Public Works on what will be the impact of the loss of funding that will help support the Road Safety Action Plan. When it does come to Ottawa Fire Safety responding to vehicle collisions, do you track, amongst all of what you track, trends and spikes, do you track issues related to Ottawa Fire Services responding to vehicle collisions?
Chair, yes, the short answer is we absolutely do it, and we break that down to, is it a, there's different categories when it comes to vehicles that we do have data sets for. It could be a single vehicle, it could be a tractor trailer. So you could be agricultural related, could be extrication, not extrication, injuries, not injuries. So we do have data points when it comes to vehicle collisions. Yes.
Okay. You don't happen to know offhand whether there's any spike or increases in your response to vehicle vehicle collisions generally, do you?
Chair, I wish I had that information in front of me. It's certainly something I can follow up. And anecdotally, I don't have that off the top of my head if it was increased in 2025 or not. So
that's fine. And if I want to pursue it, I'll do that offline. But one follow-up to that, I was at a community association meeting a while ago where I had Ottawa Police present and people from Public Works Traffic Services. And I learned that Public Works does not actively seek out data collected about vehicle collisions from Ottawa Police. And the Ottawa Police representative was surprised that Public Works did not actively seek out that information. Do you happen to know whether vehicle collision information collected by Ottawa Fire Services is proactively shared with Public Works Traffic Services?
Chair, we do sit on Safer Roads Ottawa as part of their network and their group, and the colleagues and the partners you've just mentioned sit around that table as well. That is that opportunity for us to share and exchange that information. Is it done we have regular committee meetings, and then there's chair meetings as well. I don't sit on their working group, but I certainly sit on the steering committee, and that's certainly something I can follow up with that group to say if that information is shared on a regular basis.
Thank you, Chief. One more question about vehicles and traffic. I appreciate that you are consistently meeting your response times. In the report where you spoke about issues that may sometimes affect response times, you wrote, the report had several factors can affect response times from year to year, including population growth, intensification, construction zones, weather conditions, time of day, traffic patterns, traffic intensification. Can I assume when you mean traffic intensification, I'm guessing that might mean congestion. We, as a city, are dealing a lot with traffic congestion now. We have been for several years, but it certainly is spiking. Can you speak at all to the role or the impact that increasing traffic congestion is having on your force's ability to meet your response targets?
Chair, thank you. I can speak generally for sure. We do have close working relationships with Public Works and Transportation, and our communication center does an excellent job. We're notified in advance if there's lane closures, if there's construction, and if there is in certain areas, a lot of the teams will do pre-plans or what is our alternative response routes, so we try to mitigate any impact that there is. But I think it goes without saying, anytime there's road closures or there's congestion, it does impact, and we do take that into consideration when we look at our ongoing standards from a response standard perspective. We do have GIS opportunities where we look at road networks. What is the most effective and efficient way? And whenever situations arise that normal routes of travel can't be taken, it offers us the best solution. And that's normally facilitated through our communication center.
One final question, just as a follow-up to that. And the reason I ask this is I know that, for example, when right now, I'm looking at a couple neighborhood traffic calming projects where I may be having the opportunity to put speed bumps on roads. And as the city staff deliberate whether and how to put those speed bumps in there, they will consult with Ottawa Fire Service to get your response to that. And the response, understandably and invariably, is that speed humps can affect your response time. And so then the city has to weigh whether or what kind of speed hump to put in, even though those speed humps are a proven measure to improve traffic safety. In the same vein, if we consult Ottawa Fire Services and get your input on a speed hump measure, do we consult Ottawa Fire Services, or would Ottawa Fire Services weigh in and provide input when we are contemplating or looking at any kind of measure that might seek to diminish traffic congestion? I know that we have many debates about whether or not to look at a transit priority measure. Would Ottawa Fire Services weigh in on those debates if that spoke materially to your ability to get your vehicles effectively through traffic?
Chair, thank you. The answer is yes. We're consulted. Traffic Services leads an initiative, and they provide a guideline as to, and they ask us on a regular basis, what are our primary response routes, and we provide that data to Traffic Services to say, listen, this is a primary response route from this station. We don't recommend that there's speed bumps or what have you devices installed in these areas. So we do have regular communication with Traffic Services, and we do provide that information. And certainly if council, either through the Transportation Services process, or if they even want to reach out to us to get insight on that, we're happy to offer our comments. But we do have to look at that very carefully as well, because indeed it does slow. It could impact our travel time and our response times.
Great, thank you. I can always follow up more later, and I appreciate the significant challenge you have on getting that training facility costed out over the next few years. I look forward to hearing more about that. Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Devine. Councillor Kelly, you're next, then Skalski.
Thank you very much, Chair. And before I get into the substance of my intervention today, I just want to echo the comments of my colleagues and the appreciation for what the members of the Ottawa Fire Service do on a daily basis for the residents of this city. And obviously, as a rural councillor, I want to give a particular shout out to our rural firefighters who are very present in our community on many different levels, and that goes way past just responding to fires. And I'll be flipping pancakes with them at a breakfast in about a week and a half, and looking forward to that. I am always concerned, though, when I read a report like this that says there are no rural implications. And so given that this report does explicitly alter the rural station network and does detail performance standard gaps in rural zones, I'd like to hear from staff as to why they wrote into this report that there are no rural implications.
Chair, through you. Councillor, thank you for your question. When we say we're referencing, if I'm not mistaken, if I understand your question correctly, we're referencing the station location study that was presented before a committee last year, talking about intensification growth. And I apologize, Councillor, if I'm not understanding your question, but are you referring to Manotick, and you're referring to Greeley Station 93?
Yes, changes to the rural network stations. And I mean, clearly there are rural implications to the report where there are Ottawa Fire Service in rural areas. So I'm struggling greatly with how it was determined that there are no rural implications.
So I think, respectfully, I think if we refer back to the station location study, there was a section that was filled out that there were implications in what those were, and it was clearly delineated. So this report before you today is our annual report. So we're just making reference to our previous report, and I would further suggest that the implications are positive implications for the residents, the citizens, and the firefighters with those suggested changes with that station location study.
Appreciate that. But regardless of that fact, I think when a part of a report gives staff the opportunity to highlight whether or not something has an implication in rural wards, which, and I appreciate your clarification on that being in a previous report, but there are rural implications to this. And so I want to know, was the chair of the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee consulted? Because I do believe some of this could have come to ARAC as well. So was the chair consulted on whether or not there were rural implications here?
Chair, if I could just add, Councillor, I think this is something that we'd be happy to take away. In the sense of the rural implication section of this report, it was a report for information. If there were recommendations before committee and council, we would definitely elaborate further in terms of what those recommendations are and how it could impact rural Ottawa. And absolutely, we would circle back with the chair of ARAC under those circumstances. But I definitely take your point today, and we'll take that back as part of future annual reports to make sure that we look at that section and provide a little bit more detail. So thank you.
Part of the 2024 Rural Summit and the outcomes of that were to have rural liaisons in each department that would actually be part of reviewing these and whether or not there would be rural implications. So I would like to know whether or not this report was sent to the rural liaison in emergency and protective services for their review.
Chair, yes, I could confirm that our rural liaison, who's our manager of our BTSS, he reviews these annual reports as well. So I'll take that back as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I did review previous annual reports just to look at patterns and changes as I came into this meeting, and I noticed that several historical rural response time figures reported in the 2024 annual report have changed in the 2025 report for the exact same years, in some cases going back a few years. So for example, rural moderate risk fire response for 2024 changed from 1443 to 1623 in this year's report. So can you explain what drove these revisions and whether the methodology, classification criteria, or any underlying data that you used has changed since the 2024 report?
Chair, thank you. Councillor, we quite reference to the accreditation process with the CFAI that we have. It's a third-party assessment program that we do every 5 years. We were just re-accredited for the to 2029. When we look at that, it's called continuous improvement. So when we look at our benchmarks and our response standards, we look at what the trends are, and that is all taken into consideration. So if we're not meeting benchmarks, what should the benchmarks be? And then if our numbers aren't reflecting what the actuals are, we make adjustments to make sure that we're meeting our moderate risk and effective response force to do that critical tasking. So those are moving all the time as part of our accreditation process, and it's all about continuous improvement.
Okay. Thank you. So I just, the reason I asked is that there was an increase of over 2 minutes from the reported numbers on this year's chart. So that would actually, in reality, that, in my opinion, that seems to be more of a 4-minute increase than a 2-minute increase. But can you, and it also looks like the baselines changed as well. So the last 2 years of reporting. So how are you judging that, and how do the baseline numbers change, and what's that based on?
Chair, thank you. Yeah, so if we're just referring to the baseline for moderate, again, what we do is we take all our calls into consideration. We look at what that is. And it's to the 90th percentile. So we assess all the calls. Are we meeting the certain thresholds? Are we or aren't we? And then we make adjustments accordingly based on the data and the information that we have. We mentioned today as well things that we have to take into consideration on the rural side is we have to take in, and we're very thankful to have our rural 500 members within our service, but there's an assembly time taken into consideration. So when it's not as easy as comparing apples to apples here, because when you have an assembly time on the rural side, members are at home or at work. They get a page, then we have to take into calculation what is that response time, from the place of business or work to home. And so that's why we're constantly evaluating those numbers. And again, the whole goal behind our accreditation is continuous improvement.
Okay. So just for transparency and tracking purposes, would it be possible for future annual reports to identify where historical figures have been revised from prior reporting years and explain why in the report?
So why the numbers have changed?
Yeah.
Yeah. So as stated earlier, and I'm sorry if I'm not explaining myself well, or if I'm not, I don't want to sound like I'm repeating myself, but the accreditation process, every 5 years, we review the data.
Yeah, so I understand why they change, but you've explained that clearly. But just in terms of the annual reports, when the numbers have changed from a previous year, can that be noted and explained in the report?
Yeah, thank you for your question. We can certainly do that in future.
Okay. Would you accept a direction to do that?
Councillor Chair, if you want to provide direction, that's up to yourself.
Okay,
Yep.
I would like to do that. I'm just wondering what the mechanics of that would be right now, Chair. Can I do that verbally, or do I have to ask the clerk to draft something?
Well, the chief has accepted your direction. He said it was doable, so that's sufficient for me. It'll be noted and recorded, and we can go from there.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair. My last comments and questions are just about on the training center. So I was somewhat concerned just with the lack of detail provided, and from my perspective, just the apparent slow process. Again, I don't know what a normal process in terms of timelines looks like for this, given I'm in my first term as councillor, but I do know that when I visited the training center with many of my colleagues who were new to council at the beginning of the term, and were told that the training center would be limited in its capacity moving forward because of the development next door. We all kind of got this look on our face as to what are we going to do here and how did this happen. So I'm wondering, could you provide a little bit more detail on where we are at in the process? You mentioned multiple sites, or multiple sites throughout the city being looked at. Like, what can we expect in terms of a timeline, in terms of a site being identified and selected?
Chair, thank you. I probably echo some of your comments as well. I would like it to be done yesterday, but being responsible, we're looking at all the avenues and all the vehicles. So initially, when we went out a couple of years ago, we did a request for a proposal to see what other agencies or what other organizations might be interested to join the Ottawa Fire Service, and we did that. As part of that process, we were looking at properties that were not belong to the city. They were, it was NCC, airports. So there was a number of agencies that we had discussions with about property, only to find out that most organizations do want fair market value. So we're trying to be responsible and look now very closely for city-owned property, which will help us obviously from a financial perspective. And we do have we've narrowed a few sites down that are doing, we have some engineering assessment on those sites now that are city owned. So from a cost perspective, it'll keep the cost down. But before we can say yes or no or provide details of what those properties are, we need to make sure from an engineering perspective that they would be suitable.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And I'll just say before we move on to Councillor Skalski that perfectly framed in the image of you as you were talking is a picture presumably of yourself rappelling down the Ottawa Fire Service training tower. So it's great to see that in your office. And thank you for your questions and kind words for our Ottawa Fire Service. Councillor Skalski, then Kavanagh.
Thanks very much, Chair. And thank you to the Ottawa Fire Service for everything you do and for this report today. I just had one question. I was wondering if you can share a bit more detail about the wildland fires and sort of the experience this year. And then if you can I'd be interested in knowing, whether we're doing everything we can in terms of prevention and whether there's more that we can do in rural to make sure that, we're not creating the conditions for wildland fires.
Chair, thank you. Yes, certainly from a HIRA, like a risk management perspective, wildland fires, which we also call urban-rural interface, is a significant threat within the city of Ottawa. As we know, we're 80% agricultural and rural, and we have a lot of suburbs. So just a little background within Ottawa Fire Service, we have 6 very specialized wildland firefighting units. They're trained to all the provincial standards. So when it comes to wildland firefighting, we also have a prevention program called SMART and Fire Smart. And in the rural areas, our area sector chiefs are resident experts. And what they do and what we've offered, and actually we've done this also for NCC property with Councillor Devine's ward as well. We've offered opportunities where if community associations want to have a speaker where we can come in and we can talk about how to make your home and your property fires safe. Very beneficial, and there's considerations that I would think some average residents wouldn't be aware of. And we certainly offer that from a fire prevention, and it's just a matter of reaching out to your local, either to myself or to your area sector chief in the rural area, and we can set some of those meetings up. We've done extensive programming in the West End in Ward 5, and we certainly welcome that in other wards as well.
Great, thank you for that. And so has there been any significant wildland fires this year in the city? I can think of one, but.
I just, again, before we answer that question, I just want to guide us to the annual report for 2025. I appreciate you can frame questions about how the chief responded
it's
to.
good, thank you. Yeah, okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Jared. Thank you, Chief, for your time and for the response.
You can also consider an inquiry if you've got follow-up questions. Okay, thank you. Councillor Kavanagh, then Deroche.
Thank you, Chair, very much. And thank you, Chief, to you and your team for all your work. I'm going to focus on education and water safety. It's a big concern in my ward, especially at Britannia. And I appreciate all the work because your fire station that comes out so many times. I hate it when I see you going out, but at the same time, I'm glad. But it happens just too frequently that there's rescues, and it's because of the Deschênes Rapids and people's lack of knowledge. We put up signage. The City of Ottawa has worked hard to put up signage, and hopefully that will make a difference. But I just wanted your comments on what more we can do. And also, I want to know if you'll continue to help out in reaching out to youth and young campers, because we did that last year at the Ron Colbus Lakeside summer camp, where kids got to go down to the water and hear about water rescue. And I think that was a huge help. It really got kids to understand the safety of water, and I hope you can participate again this year. But just want your general comments on what we can do. Thanks.
And again, if we could frame it within the annual report, that would be great.
Yes, it's in there. Water rescues are in there, and I just want to know what we can do to improve it. And I saw that 12% increase.
Chair, thank you for that. And very timely with this time of year, starting to get nice. We're already starting to respond to incidences of water rescue already. So I don't. There's not an easy answer to this because I don't think it's a one agency, one person. It's got to be a team approach, and I will commend yourself and your office and the Britannia group that got together last year. We had all the agencies around the table because I think that's how we're going to be successful when it comes to prevention. It's all about sharing the same messaging. It's about identifying where the issues or what the root issue is, and how can we achieve through communication or through public education. So I think through the Drown Prevention Ottawa Coalition, as you know, through Ottawa Paramedics, Ottawa Fire, Ottawa Police, I think, and then you also have the agencies, the boating agencies as well. Just everybody identifying and communicating the same message, and I think that's how we're going to be successful with our messaging moving forward. So,
thank you. And I believe you participated last year with the summer camps, and just showing the kids the rescue boat and what you do. Will that be possible again this year?
Chair, yes, I think that's going to be an ongoing event that we can offer public education, and having the presence of our partners and agencies together, I think is really important and sends a strong message.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I know we can do better, and appreciate all the work. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh, Councillor Desroches, and then Lulaf. Councillor Desroches, I think you're on mute. There you go.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I just, found the button. Thank you, Chief, for the update. As you know, we have quite a few surplus properties for the city in the Leacham area. And I'm currently doing a visioning exercise with the community on the future of that area, given that the public lands will be coming available. Can you confirm the police station or the fire station, excuse me, is staying? There's no plans to relocate the station in the Leacham area.
Chair, thank you for that question. Yes, as per our station location study of last year, there's Station 32 Leitrim will remain exactly where it is.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you for that confirmation. Second, the Police Services Board has been looking at a training facility for the police. We've asked the police service to come back with some additional detail. We've asked them to look at where there might be sort of joint sharing arrangements. And I wouldn't suggest that the fire training is different from police, but if it's just classroom training, is there opportunity that branches would be able to share, for example, classroom availability if it's just a classroom context?
Chair, thank you for that question. As early as last week, we met with Ottawa Police Service, and we're already starting those discussions about where opportunities or synergies may exist.
Okay, thank you, Chief. That's good to hear. And lastly, just on the conversation of rescues, and this is an important function of the service, and the team does a great job in some very harrowing situations. Often it's a pet rescue. And people feel very good about that, of course, right? The pet is rescued, and we tell people not to go out on the ice to make an attempt to rescue the pet. But we don't collect statistics on whether the pet was off leash. I mean, that's a critical message there too, that I think there's some people that when they get into kind of some of these natural areas, that the dogs are off leash, and that creates a situation of risk if they're not able to control their dog. The dog ends up on the ice. The owners are at risk, and even potentially our first responders, right? As much as they're trained and qualified and they try to minimize the risk, I don't think anyone wants to see a tragedy. That's preventable. And I think that's the point here, that these are preventable if the dog is kept on a leash and proper control. So I know I've engaged with you on this, and we don't keep statistics on there. I think we should, so that we can kind of then follow up with bylaw potentially, or with proper signage, so that again we avoid a very tragic situation. You don't collect the stats presently, is that the case? And what are your thoughts on how we can do a better job in terms of educating and preventing these situations?
Chair, thank you for that question. Yes, and I know we've had this discussion, and I know you can appreciate a lot of the times when we're at an emergency scene. I don't want to say it's organized chaos. It's not chaos. It's very organized from our side, but there's a lot of moving pieces. So sometimes gathering that information at that time or that scene, it may or may not be appropriate. But I think there's an opportunity for our team to, from the responding members, to offer notes within, when they get back to the station, offer notes in their observations that can draw to conclusions that, do we need to consult with our colleagues in bylaw service? Was this animal off leash? So your point is certainly taken, and it's something we'll take into consideration.
Thank you, Chief. That's fair, and I wouldn't expect our team to deal. It's a very traumatic situation for everyone involved, and I wouldn't expect you to be kind of Inspector Gadget on the scene here for this. But if it's trending, if there's some follow-up, as you suggest, that there needs to be some conversations about signage, I think that's appropriate. So thank you, Chief. That's all for me, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Desroches. Councillor Lulaf.
Thanks so much, Chair. Chief, I just want to take a brief moment to thank you and the whole Ottawa Fire Services team for the incredible work that you do every day. At the heart of it, the work is about protecting people and saving lives and preventing the loss of homes and businesses and property. And when something goes wrong, residents are counting on your team to show up quickly, calmly, and professionally, and time again. That's exactly what you do. But I also want to appreciate how broad the work that you do really is. We see it in major incidents like the water rescues that Councillor Kavanagh was talking about, the flood responses across my ward and Councillor Kelly's and others, the rural support that your rural firefighters provide every day, the public education, community initiatives, and outreach. But we also see it in smaller moments that matter really deeply to residents, right down last year to helping remove a crushed ring from an elderly woman's finger in my ward. That kind of care really matters, and it may not always make the headlines, although Nick will try to make sure that it does. It really makes a difference in someone's life. And I want to recognize the work being done around mental health and resiliency, and I really appreciated seeing that in this report. This is really demanding work, and making sure that the people who serve in the front lines are supported is not just important, it's essential, and I think that your service has really been a leader in that area. Your district chiefs are incredible, especially Mark Lalonde. He's responsive, he's helpful, and he's always willing to work through issues when something comes up in the community. And of course, Nick DeFazio, your communications officer. Nick does such an excellent job keeping residents, the media, and members of council informed when emergencies or major events happen. That clear communication makes a real difference, and I don't think anything has happened over the course of the last 8 years in Orleans and then Orleans East Cumberland that Nick hasn't sent me a note about right away. So please pass along our sincere thanks to your entire team. Their work is noticed, and it's valued, and it's deeply appreciated. Thanks again, Chief.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues, for such kind comments today for all personnel of the Ottawa Fire Service. I do want to add a few comments or questions myself, if I may. Chief, is the only fee we charge the public for services that the OFS provides is for repeated false alarms, or are there other fees? I know there may be some permit charges, but with respect to calls for service, is that the only fee we charge, or are there other fees?
Thank you, Chair, for that question. No, there's under our fees and charge services or fees and charges bylaw, there's a number of items pertaining to like hazardous material type calls, technical type calls where we use consumable products. We can invoice and charge back. Something to flag. We've had recent conversations though that this is an item that we do want to review potentially in 2027 and bring forth an update to committee and council.
Just where I'm going with this is I'm again looking at the call breakdown, which is only going up. If I am setting off fireworks in a dry field in July and I cause a brush fire in my build, if I go out in a watercraft at Britannia Bay and I'm not experienced on the water and I require a water rescue in my build, if I, as Councillor Droe said, if I go out on the ice in March and require a rescue for myself or my pet in my build, there are certain behaviors that continuously happen that put the lives of our responders at risk, that put the lives and property at risk. And at some point, $201 million budget that taxpayers are covering, we have to ask ourselves, is it time for certain calls to be billed for service? Has the service considered this before?
Chair, thank you. For what under the open air fire bylaw, there is a provision where there is charges under provincial offenses, but we also have the ability, which we have been actually for people that are burning with a permit, they don't have the right resources, they're not burning within the conditions. We do have, and we have been invoicing for our apparatus and services for that. You raise water rescue, and I think those are items where I think our team does need to review all our call types and see if there's opportunities there as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for presenting today, and I think you've heard loud and clear from members unanimously our appreciation and support for the Ottawa Fire Service and all personnel, so thank you. So colleagues, the motion before us is that the committee recommends the council receive the 2025 Ottawa Fire Services annual report for information. Is this matter carried? Thank you. Okay, item 6, Councillor's item. Councillor Plant, as I said in my intro, strengthening protections against construction encroachment and enforcing Committee of Adjustment conditions. I believe there is a revision. So Councillor, if you just want to highlight that and maybe remind us by reading the therefore clauses, that would be appreciated.
Absolutely, and thank you, Chair.
And just procedurally, when I will be able to speak after this, or how does it go? I've never done a counselor's report, so that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I will permit you to speak as well. So highlight the changes
Okay.
first, therefore clauses, then intro, and then colleagues, we do have 3 public delegates on
Yep.
this item, and then we'll get to questions. So go ahead.
Yeah, so I thank you to Scott. He's actually in the audience right now for his help with the revisions. I will just read, you guys know me, I only read the therefore be it resolved clauses. If you have any questions, Scott and I are here to answer any questions. Thank you, Scott, for your help. And John, thank you so much. Therefore, be it resolved that recommendations of report ACS 2026 OCC CCS 0064 be amended as follows. That the Emergency Preparedness and Protective Services Committee recommend Council A, direct staff to review the provisions of the City of Ottawa's right of entry bylaw in comparison with the provisions set out in the City of Toronto's Municipal Code, Chapter 363, Article 8, report back in Q1 2027, and consider whether any resulting amendments should be included in the next term of council bylaw review work plan in accordance with the council approved bylaw review framework, and report back to Planning and Housing Committee in Q1 2027 on potential municipal tools, including but not limited to dust control, security requirements, restoration bonds, vibration monitoring tools that may be implemented within existing legislative authority, and that the City of Ottawa write the Province of Ontario to A, request amendments to the Trespass to Property Act to include provisions that explicitly prohibit unauthorized encroachment into adjacent private properties during demolition or construction activity, as well as the monitoring of other potential damages, and to further provide an escalating penalty scale consistent with the maximum penalties currently authorized under the Act, and it requests the enactment of provisions in the Building Code Act to enable the use of administrative monetary penalties, AMPs, as an enforcement tool to address encroachment violations promptly and effectively, and that this report and supporting documentation are adopted by Council be attached to the City of Ottawa's letter. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you for identifying those changes. So if you want to now have introduction.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair and colleagues. I do want to acknowledge something up front. Members may feel like they're sitting in a planning committee meeting today rather than EPPS. Before we started this process, my office actually asked the clerk where this report properly belongs because of the file overlap and so many jurisdictional overlaps. Planning, bylaw, building code, enforcement, public safety, and we were directed to EPPS, so I'm generally very pleased that planning staff are here today to help quarterback this file across departments because we know that cross-department coordination is exactly what residents have been asking for. I am pleased to bring forward this report today on strengthening protections against construction encroachment and improving enforcement under the Committee of Adjustment Conditions. I will start by being very clear. I support infill and support intensification. Ward 12 has approved over 1,500 units since my election in 2022. We need more housing in Ottawa, especially in neighborhoods where we already have infrastructure, transit access, and walkable communities to support growth. But residents should not have to sacrifice their safety, their property, or their peace of mind in order for that growth to happen. What we are seeing more and more often are situations where neighboring residents are left carrying the risk and the burden when construction goes wrong. We heard from residents dealing with damaged fences, excavators crossing into private property, blocking driveways, debris falling into adjacent lots, and serious safety concerns that leave people feeling powerless in their own homes. One story that has stayed with me throughout this process came from Goulburn Avenue in Sandy Hill. During a demolition project, debris repeatedly entered into the neighboring property and eventually severed a visible gas line, damaging electrical infrastructure and forcing residents to leave their home for weeks. There was also concerns around hazardous materials and asbestos. Residents reported more than $20,000 in damages. But what struck me was not the damage itself, but how difficult it was for residents to figure out who could actually help them in real time. What residents repeatedly told us is that current system feels circular and reactive. They call bylaw, they're referred elsewhere. They call police, they're told it's a civil matter. Meanwhile, damage is already done. The report is about addressing these enforcement gaps. One of the key recommendations is asking staff to explore a framework similar to what exists in Toronto, where municipalities have clear authority around construction encroachment, restoration obligations, and enforcement tools. We are also asking that the province modernize the Trespass to Property Act so that it actually reflects the realities of intensification and redevelopment in 2026. Right now, the legislation simply has not kept pace with the way communities in Ontario are growing and changing. The second major issue raised in the report is a lack of meaningful enforcement for the Committee of Adjustment Conditions. Residents participate in consultations in good faith, compromised or reached, variances are approved with conditions attached,
attached, whether it's landscaping, setbacks, privacy measures, and other mitigations, and then too often those conditions are ignored without consequence. This undermines confidence not just in the project, but in our planning system. I also want to mention that during our public consultation meeting, which included staff from bylaw, building code, services, planning, heritage, and my office, residents heard directly that many of these enforcement gaps persist because municipalities simply do not have the legislative tools or authority needed to effectively intervene and proactively. I actually think this was an important moment in the process because it reinforces that residents are not imagining these frustrations. They're real jurisdictional and legislative limitations, and this report is an attempt to start addressing these collaboratively and constructively. I also want to acknowledge my office proactively reached out to industry stakeholders for feedback on this report because it's important for me that this conversation not be one-sided. I want to thank Jason Berggraf of the Greater Ottawa Home Builders Association for their thoughtful written submission. In their later, GOBA states that they support the objectives of the report, namely responsible construction practices, neighbor site protection, and better communication between builders and the community. They also expressed a willingness to work collaboratively with city staff on clear expectation, improved communication protocols, and more coordinated complaint resolution process. I also want to acknowledge the written feedback we received from Jeremy Stilbert, the Hintonburg Community Association, small builders, and residents across the city. I know Jeremy and his family personally, and I actually think there's a lot of agreement in what we both say. The report is not anti-development. It is fundamentally about creating clear rules, greater predictability, and better accountability for how development occurs. Responsible builders already know the rules, communicate with neighbors, and work hard to minimize impacts. Stronger clarity around expectations and enforcement ultimately helps distinguish responsible builders from bad actor and reduces gray areas that currently create frustration for residents, builders, and staff. I think it's important to recognize that this is not just a Ward 12 issue. As intensification continues across Ottawa, these conversations are becoming increasingly relevant in neighborhoods throughout the city, and frankly, we're already seeing that happen. I would like
to thank every director, service director that contributed to this report. They were very honest and collaborated. Thank you so much of the EPPSC as well as planning, public word, bylaws. Thank you for your expertise. Thank you for your participation in the public consultation. I would like to thank also the residents who were witnesses. Very of these are facing insecurity, stress, property damage, and they feel abandoned in the system. It's not easy to tell this type of experience publicly. This contribution You don't have any more time. Okay. I'm sorry. And then thank you, Cameron. Thank you to my members. Cameron is going back to school in law. So good luck in your future endeavor.
So, colleagues, we do have 3 speakers today, 3 delegates. In addition, I'll just make you aware we have received 5 written submissions as well, and those submissions are part of the council SharePoint site, should you wish to go and read them. But now I'll call upon our delegates. Cheryl Parrott from the Hintonburg Community Association is first, followed by Jason Berggraf, and then Heather Pearl. So, Ms. Parrott, are you online? Cheryl, I can see you. Good morning to you.
Thank you. Yes, I'm online now. So I do have a presentation for you as well.
Okay.
And good morning, Chair and members. What Councillor Plant has given you, we've experienced all of those instances. So I'm not going to run through them all. I'm going to try to show you in picture form a little bit. So the Hintonburg Community Association really strongly supports these recommendations and hope they come soon. We have had a lot of infill redevelopment over the last 20 years, and many of the lots in our community are very small. They're 25 foot by 90 foot or smaller, and the side yard, the minimum side yard setback is only 0.6 meters. So to be able to do that, very often developers have to encroach on neighboring properties. And people try to be very tolerant, but that hasn't worked out very well because their properties get damaged and there's no recourse for them except civil action. And it seems that that's become the norm, that encroachment is just expected and that builders feel they have a right to go onto other people's property. So this first slide shows you one of about 4 properties in Hintonburg where not only has the foundation been exposed, but they've actually undercut underneath the building. And potentially the building could be damaged, could have collapsed. So this particular one was during the pandemic, which was a difficult time to have it happen. And it was after many emails, phone calls, and with Councillor Leeper's help that we got building code services to require an engineer's report and shoring for the neighboring property. And we worked closely with the owner because he couldn't navigate the system on his own. He didn't feel confident doing it. So other damage was done to his building as well. The back part, partially his parking area collapsed, and that's where also one of the apartment entrances was. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So this one is another neighbor's porch that was undercut. It was left dangling, and the owner had to fix it himself because the contractor just wouldn't, and he was worried about leaving it too long. Next slide, please. This neighbor's driveway disappeared without any notice, and he had to park his car with his bumper out over the sidewalk for many months, encroaching onto the sidewalk area. Next slide, please. And this owner almost had the wall of his house damaged, and it almost severed his gas line, as well as the wall kicked out while they were doing the demolition. And also to note, they hadn't actually closed the street while they were doing this, and the wall was very close to the street. So this could have been a real disaster happening. Next slide. So this owner boasted that he saved $60,000 by not putting in drainage. But because he didn't put in drainage, it flooded the property behind him for a period of about 2 years until it was finally resolved and he was forced to put in drainage. And next slide. And this is an example of a lack of adherence to conditions placed by the Committee of Adjustment, as well as to just zoning as well, where the whole front of this property has been hardscaped. They put in one tiny little tree, but there's no green space anyplace. So neighbors' properties, use of neighbors' properties without their consent is happening on most projects. Restoration is very difficult. We've had to have police involved in at least 3 construction projects in Hintonburg where neighbors have been threatened because they've asked for builders not to block their own driveways or
1 minute.
encroachment on their property. So we do try to work with developers. We provide them with a builder's code of conduct, which we took a lot of the information from the Champlain Park group. But neighbors are very frustrated. And so we urge you to support these recommendations and press staff to move ahead as a priority for bylaw review. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Parrott, for your presentation today. It's appreciated. A question from Councillor Plant.
Hi, Cheryl. Nice to see you. Always in the same spot in your living room. I feel like I know your living room really well by now. I just have a quick question because you showed a bunch of pictures, and I know you've been involved in this issue in the community association for quite some time. What would you say the timeline for this being super problematic has been for you guys? I would say Hintonburg is ahead of, say, the Vanier area in terms of intensification and gentrification, but maybe your timelines are a bit different than the Vanier area. So I just wanted to give you a bit of a calendar overview, if you could, for the committee here.
Yeah, because I think, over the last 10 years or 15 years, I think we've had about 1,000 units added here. So the intensification has been really, really problematic. It's just construction every place. And a lot of the builders have been fine. And I find actually lately it's a bit better. During the pandemic, it was just hell. It was just hell everywhere because of staffing challenges, there seemed to be no enforcement. or little enforcement. And the ones that we worked on during that time were very difficult to get any movement on. And it really took a lot of calls, emails, and certainly Councillor Leeper weighing in to be able to get anything to happen. In the last year or so, things have been a bit better. And I think part of that is the proactive work that we've done by meeting with developers and giving them the code of conduct and mentioning all the problems that we've had and saying, we really don't want police to have to end up at your construction site.
Follow up? Okay, yeah, and just a quick question. Do you also have the situation which we are seeing where these are not, builders with a name and an address and people we can recognize? It's like often a numbered company and they subcontract to a subcontractor and then we can't find them even when we need to have recourse. I'm just wondering if that happens to you as well.
That does happen, and it's often usually the smaller builders. The bigger builders, it's easier to contact them, and they are more responsive, absolutely. And we do ask for trying to have a 24-hour phone number that we can contact them at. But you're right, the smaller builders, it's very difficult, and there's lots of subs. And then even the contractor says, well, I can't control my subcontractors. And that's been the response where police have been involved, I know. They just deflect.
Right. And I do want to clarify for people, and I did say this in my comments, there are a lot of amazing builders, big and small out there, but when things go wrong, they go completely south. So thank you so much, Cheryl. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Ms. Parrott, for your delegation today. It's appreciated. Next, Jason Berggraf, Executive Director of GOBA.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity. I very rarely get a chance to speak to this committee. It's usually planning, so it's always good to see a few fresh faces. Again, thanks for the opportunity to speak today, provide comments on the report. My comments will be relatively short. Councillor Plante kind of took the most of the thunder in our written submission, but nonetheless, let me begin by saying that GOBA supports the objectives behind the report. Responsible construction practices, protection of neighboring properties, and improved communication between builders and residents are all important goals, and our members support efforts to improve public confidence in the development process. In our written submission, we outline a number of principles and considerations we believe should be the starting point for this work. Most infill builders are responsible operators trying to deliver the housing this city urgently needs on constrained urban sites. We need to ensure that any new rules are proportionate, practical, and targeted so they don't unintentionally make housing delivery more difficult or more expensive. Many urban infill projects physically cannot proceed without some degree of temporary adjacent access. Narrow lots, limited staging space, excavation requirements, and proximity to neighboring homes can create real logistical challenges. But that reality does not excuse poor behavior or property damage, but it does mean the city's approach needs to recognize the practical realities of urban intensification. GOBA believes any framework should be clear and predictable as well as enforceable. If this framework has these principles, it can improve public confidence while still allowing us to deliver the infill housing supply the city needs and desires. On the Committee of Adjustment side, we agree that development conditions should always be fulfilled. In most cases, we wonder if the challenge is not necessarily a lack of enforcement powers, but rather inconsistency and lack of clarity in how those conditions are drafted, monitored, and verified across different municipal authorities. Ultimately, GOBA believes that we can improve accountability, neighborhood protections, and public confidence without creating unintended barriers to responsible intensification. We look forward to working constructively with staff and council on this. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you for your delegation, and thank you for joining us to this committee today. Question from Councillor Plante.
Hey, Jason. Nice to see you here today, again, in a different context. I told people at the beginning this might seem like a planning meeting. So, you're here regardless. So thank you so much. I did have a question for you. Can you explain to me, because I don't seem to really understand what the numbered company thing is that I just discussed with Cheryl. Can you explain that for the people who are here around the table? I sort of get it, but I sort of don't get it. But it seems to be happening more and more often. So I was wondering if you could explain it.
Sure. When you incorporate a company, no matter what business you're in Ontario, it doesn't have to have a brand name, as it were. It can just be a numbered Ontario company, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Ontario Inc. Some companies will do that to lessen their profile, conceivably, right? And have a harder time kind of finding more information about that. And in that case, nonetheless, even if it is a numbered company, when you're talking about developments like this, that especially have fencing and extensive excavation work, there should still be the regular City of Ottawa development poster boards with all the information and contacts for the file leads and all of those things, regardless of what the name of the company is. And then that file lead should have the appropriate contact information. So yes, it's certainly sometimes a question of enforcement and tracking for it. And we just we want bad actors to stay to not be able to operate outside the guidelines that everyone else is trying to do.
Thank you. And a quick follow-up to that, because I actually do agree with you that sometimes everybody's got to, what they say, put a little water in their wine. Like we have a development on Wilbrod right now that's been encroaching in the bike lane for almost a year now because they do need that staging area. And no one's really complained because we understand, we have limited space in Sandy Hill and sometimes you have to sacrifice a bit of your bike lane for the sake of the development. So I just wanted to point that out because I think, I mean, I could be wrong, but I do think downtown we are very flexible and understanding about these things. It's just when your property is damaged, when gas lines are breached, when you're blocking the driveway, the kind of pictures that Cheryl Parrott of the Hintonburg Community Association pointed to earlier. Like, I think when it gets to that point, that's when people get really, really concerned and alarm bells are rung. So I just wanted to point that out that, I think we're pretty flexible here downtown. We understand that we need housing. We actually see the effects of the housing crisis every single day. So I just wanted to kind of point that out because it's important for us to put that into context. Merci.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hubley, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Jason, thank you for presenting today. Appreciate your insight into this. I'm also looking for some ideas your association may be able to offer here because I'll use your words, the bad actors, because my words may not be suitable for use in this committee. I've had some very terrible experiences with some bad actors out here trying to do stuff. The problem with that is the community gets upset with what they see. Some of the examples that Councillor Plant has provided here and Cheryl are good ones, but there's even worse ones out there. And the problem with that is it gives a bad name to the whole industry. And I think in Ottawa, we're fortunate in that there's a lot of family-run businesses that put a lot of extra into quality into their work because their names are attached to it. So this numbered company thing is something I hope we can look a little more into. But from you, is there a way to find out some ideas that might help address these bad actors? For example, to address what Councillor Plant was saying about the damage, the unexpected damage to driveways and that. What about if we explore some sort of bond or something that has to be attached to a project that's going to impact a neighbor, so that they have an insurance company that they can go to get this and not be told, well, this guy's left town and tomorrow he's going to be number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Ontario Inc. How they change their corporate identities to hide behind that. So I'm looking for ideas like that from you as this progresses to see what we can do here. And if you have any you want to add to this, now's a great time to do that.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor, for the opportunity. I mean, it certainly won't just be me. It'll actually be, the esteemed members of our Urban Infill Council who deal with these things every day, and this is their primary work, not land development and larger subdivisions. Like this infill work is their bread and butter and what they focus on. I'm going to defer to them for kind of this subsequent conversation with staff on looking at this framework. Overall, we definitely want to track bad actors even if they change company numbers and contact the principal contacts of those pieces are something that we can track better through the development application system than maybe what we do currently. And if there's escalating like if you're identified as being sort of someone who had troubled files in the past, much like we do at the provincial level, and you have to post additional insurances or what have you. on an escalating basis, on subsequent files to ensure that people stay within the lines and they've kind of learned their lesson, if you will. We certainly want to explore that with staff.
That brings up a good point. Like one of the things maybe we need to be looking at here is doing some sort of risk assessment. So in the scenario you just used where someone has had problems in the past or caused damage in the past, I wonder if, for example, our right-of-way people that gives them permission to do road cuts and things like that, and then they don't repair it properly. Because they're a higher risk, it could be 100% inspection for them, whereas there's a lot of other of your members that wouldn't require that. They're going to do the proper repairs and do all the work correctly, and that would keep costs low, yet provide a higher level of enforcement for, again, I'll use your term, the bad actors.
Yeah, properly allocating the enforcement resources and inspectors that we have to focus on the ones that are going to, potentially have more issues than others. We've always been supportive of sort of a preferred builder contractor list to put this positive spin on it that could have less scrutiny from the city, and once you kind of establish and prove yourself as a continuously good actor, you can kind of get on that list. We've always been in favor of that sort of idea.
And I think Ottawa is one of the few cities where that may work because of the high number of, like I mentioned earlier, family-run businesses that do the good work. Okay, thank you very much for your delegation, and thank you, Councillor Plante, for putting this on the table.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, and again, thank you, Mr. Bergraff, for your delegation today. Appreciate it. See you again soon. Finally, our final delegate today is Heather Pearl, member of Champlain Park Community Association, Chair of Planning and Zoning. Ms. Pearl.
Can you hear me now? Unfortunately, my camera just died, so you're going to get my blue-eyed grass picture. I've been working on this file, on the infill file, both with the city. I've worked with Jason in the past, and I've worked directly with developers because my community is in favor of infill, but we are not in favor of damages to property. And this actually is a significant, it has a serious impact on residents from the perspectives of their health, their safety, their quality of life, and their finances. And it has an impact on the environment and stormwater control and all those sorts of good things that the city is spending so much money on trying to mitigate. We've been doing this for quite a few years now. And so I think that we're pretty familiar with the bad actors and the problems that they cause. I've provided a list of the common encroachments. Some of these are in the Builder Code of Conduct, which we felt we had to develop way back in 2014. And we've been using different iterations of it ever since. And we've actually, the most recent one was 2021. The city has now published a number of documents on the same issues. When we go to Committee of Adjustment, we ensure that we always had the Builder Code of Conduct. Now we attach the city documents, and we ensure that everything that we send to the Committee of Adjustment is sent in advance to the developer. We try to contact developers in advance too as well. What we've found amongst so many of these different deficiencies, I've provided the long list, is that even with sometimes with good developers, a lack of supervision by the builder can lead to worker shortcuts during the term of the project. So I want to flag that as an issue that does occur. We've had a lot of Committee of Adjustment approvals adjusted by builders after the fact. They feel that once they have their approval, once they've had me going to the Committee of Adjustment saying, yes, we agree that this is a good application, and provide planning information for it, planning justification for it, then some of them feel that they can just do whatever they want. And we've had a lot of deferrals at Committee of Adjustment simply because the builders keep coming in with stuff that violates bylaws, safety, etc., and they have to go back to the drawing board. So we've had a lot of experience working on this. They tend to increase building heights. They intend to increase setbacks. The amount of allowable hardscaping versus soft landscaping and driveway widths are most frequently altered requirements. Front and rear yard paving to accommodate extra parking spaces is also common. And Cheryl has already shown you the issues with encroaching on the side yard setbacks, which in our neighborhood are 4 feet. So they have their own 4 feet with it, which they can excavate in, and then they go into the 4 feet on neighbor's side. And we've had situations where they've put up big timbers to try to hold up the building, the side of the building next to them. We've had damage to property from stone slingers, cars and sidewalls of
1 minute
properties. Okay. So last thing is designated substance reports and unsafe demolition. We've had numerous issues where in an older neighborhood, we've got lots of asbestos, lots of designated materials. These things are being demolished without proper they actually don't submit proper designated substance reports. People don't know who to contact. I have all kinds of amazing documentation, which I am very happy to supply. And I would like to work on this issue to try to ameliorate it. I support Stephanie Plant 100%. And I feel like this is an opportunity for us. We are dealing with health, safety, environment. We are dealing with really important issues that need to be ameliorated.
That is your time this morning.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, but don't go anywhere because we have a question for you from Councillor Plant.
Hi, Heather. Thank you so much for being here today. I actually had to Google where this neighborhood is. So yes, I now I know. But thank you so much for being here today. And I'm perfectly happy if you want to reach out to my office afterwards to have a chat. This will go to council in 2 weeks. So it's always helpful to have these kinds of reinforcements so people don't just think this is like a downtown issue. Yeah, just wanted to thank you for your delegation today. I mean, I've seen the panic on people's faces when their homes are in the process of dealing with this. And so I know you've probably dealt with the same thing. So I just wanted to thank you for your advocacy and for being here today. Merci.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And Ms. Pearl, thank you for your delegation and your written submission. We appreciate it. Thanks very much. Okay, colleagues, if you have questions for Councillor Plant, we have staff here as well that can answer questions. This is the time. So, Councillor, I'm going to take other colleagues first. Okay, so Councillor Hubley, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. For staff, how soon can something like this be put in? And what can we do about assigning some risk scores to this to deal with these bad actors that have been discussed?
Mr. Chair, John Buck here, Chief Building Official with the City of Ottawa. My group in Building Code Services is responsible for the overall building permitting scheme associated with any new build, renovation, anything from a high rise, a hospital, down to a shed or a deck. Certainly appreciate the councillor's report and the comments of the delegation and the comments of the public at your meeting, councillor. In terms of the question, I think it's a good opportunity to consult with Mr. Burgraff, some of the industry, and look at the legislation en masse within our authoritative box, and ultimately see if anything more can be done. Certainly, I think there's some potential quick wins here. There was a guideline that was generated some time ago with respect to infill construction. Happy to take a look at that, as well as some of the provisions within the building bylaw, for example. Something that has just come up. Well, it's not just come up, but was spoke of in the delegations, was perhaps better placarding on the construction sites themselves, so that a concerned resident, passerby, what have you, is better informed with respect to who to call. That's challenging for us sometimes. So perhaps we can take a look at that, but comprehensively. I'm accepting of the timing of this with the proliferation of infill construction, and everyone wants more and more housing. I think we would agree to that. But how is it done responsibly and in as minimally invasive or impactful, way on adjacent properties? So I'm sorry, Council, I think there was two parts of that question, and perhaps I had missed it, but I'm happy to speak further if I didn't address what you were asking.
No, John, I just want to also say for you, like any experience I've had in the past with problem infills, your staff and yourself have been amazing with helping us out with that and providing some guidance, especially if residents come forward ahead of time. There's always been some good help there. So I want to give you a shout out for that. I do appreciate your efforts. I think you've answered what I wanted to know, which was how soon we might be able to get something done and who all we should do. The one piece I forgot to ask was enforcement of this, because in my own experience, a lot of the problem files have come from committee of adjustment files. And so that takes it out of the hands of a lot of our city officials, with the exception of some of your inspectors. So is there any suggestion how to deal with committee of adjustment files in particular?
Mr. Chair, through you, I will say that, yes, sometimes they are somewhat complicated. I do agree with some of Mr. Burgraff's comments about sometimes it's the specificity of those conditions that somewhat leave things a little bit gray and open to interpretation. However, having said that, I think in one of the presentations, it was showing, for example, where a front yard was fully hardscaped, a backyard. I know, Councillor Hubley, you've seen some of this even in your wards, and I would say that we largely work as a team with the City of Ottawa, because unfortunately, there's no one-stop shop for a lot of this, anything from construction dust to, right of way to encroachment on adjacent properties. When violations are flagged during construction, that's when we use our networks. Whether it be bylaw and regulatory services, whether it be development inspections, or other city entities. It kind of depends on the nature of the committee of adjustment violations. Sometimes we see forestry, for example, forestry concerns, and then we'll involve forestry. So it kind of depends on what those violations are. Sometimes if it's something as black and white as a window in a house or something like that, well, that's my group, because building code services, looks at the buildings themselves. Whereas once you get out into the yard of the house, the grading and drainage concerns and onto the right of way, that would be development inspection. So it is a little bit of a regulatory. There's some overlap, and not so much overlap, but there's many entities that could potentially be involved regardless of the nature of the violation. I don't know if any of my colleagues have anything further to add to that.
Seeing none. Councillor Hubley, anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Do you want to address all of your questions or comments in wrap up? Is that best?
Can I ask a question?
Yes?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Councillor Johnson, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. So, looking at the recommendations of the report, we're directing staff to go and see what tools could be brought forward. And I guess I just would like to understand how this comes back for consideration. In part, it might be for consideration under the new bylaw work plan of next term. Is that correct?
Chair, through you, staff would look at one of the existing bylaws, which is our right of entry bylaw, and do a comparative analysis with the bylaw in Toronto that the councillor has highlighted in the report as a potential opportunity worth exploring to see if some of those regulations could be looked at here in the city of Ottawa. So staff would do that review. And if so, if we determine that we can make amendments to that right of entry bylaw, we would come back in early next year and suggest that it be added to the council approved bylaw review work plan as part of that framework.
Okay, and then for the other pieces that the chief building official was describing there in terms of quick wins, I understand that to be outside of a bylaw. Is that correct? There would be other mechanisms perhaps at your disposal currently under building code services that you would be able to implement in a different way?
Mr. Chair, yes. So per 1B, report back to Planning and Housing Committee in early 2027 on the other suite outside of the bylaw that GM Perot just spoke to. So, and that's quite a broad and potentially wide-ranging list of concerns. Issues excluding but not limited to, say, the dust control security requirements, restoration bonds, vibration monitoring tools, et cetera. So we'll be taking a look at the rest of those comprehensive issues and we'll be reporting back to Planning and Housing Committee.
Okay, so that goes back to PHC. Okay. All right, well, that sounds very good. I mean, certainly this is absolutely not a downtown issue. This is an everywhere issue. And sometimes in the outer urban wards, we get the benefit of the core going through some of the most egregious examples, and then we get to benefit from some of the closer examinations. Of course, coordination between all those departments continues to be a concern of mine, just as you suggested, John, that, there are many actors on any one site that could be called into question at any time. But I am interested in this. We've explored the idea of demolition control for our ward as a way of preventing, big pits opening up in our neighborhoods. But that has been sort of suggested that we don't advance that because it could look like putting up red tape for housing in a time when that's inappropriate. But here we have situations where the reasonable enjoyment of a neighborhood is being compromised quite dramatically. And this, the safety of someone's individual property, obviously, for the sake of housing in various states of construction. So I appreciate the edits to the motion. I think they respect the bylaw work plan process in the way that's appropriate for many of our competing priorities on this tiny but mighty team. And so I'll look forward to the results of that. And I do appreciate Councillor Plant's work in moving this forward and being creative in a place where we find ourselves with few tools. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Your words are appreciated. Okay, Councillor Plant, over to you for wrap up and questions.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to give one last, comment before we wrap up because I was so brutally cut off in my opening statement. Just kidding. I wanted to thank John Buck. You were in my opening comments, but again, it didn't fit the timeline. I guys don't think you guys appreciate the work that has gone into this report in consulting with John. And John has showed up at many sites where things have gone completely awry, and he's always calm and patient and ready to answer questions. So I just wanted to give him his flowers right now in front of everyone. He's probably really embarrassed. But thank you so much, John. I know you deal with a lot. I know, and I know sometimes you don't even have the answers, and you're very honest about that. So hopefully this report and the recommendations can help you and your team do your job better, because that's what we want, is a city where everybody has the right tools and procedures to make it a great city to live. And thank you so much, Chair, for all your indulgence and your patience on this file as well. You deserve flowers, not as many as John, but some flowers. And thank you, everyone, bylaw, planning, building code, everybody who participated in this process, because we, like Councillor Johnson said, we deal with a lot in the core, and we want to make sure that intensification going outwards into the city is a better process for everyone. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Councillor, for your kind words. So, colleagues, we have the revised motion that Councillor Plant read in at the beginning. That's before us now. Is that motion carried? Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Plant again. Okay, just for added clarity, we voted on the amended motion and now the motion as amended? Yes. Okay, so is that carried as well?
Carried.
Right, thank you very much. Okay, item 7 is in-camera items. There are no in-camera items for today. Item 8 is notices of motion. And I believe, Councillor Johnson, you have one on behalf of Councillor Kavanaugh. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, please read that in.
Whereas the City of Ottawa's bylaw review work plan identifies regulatory bylaws for review or development each term of council, and whereas municipalities have the authority to regulate nuisances, including outdoor illumination and indoor lighting that can be seen outdoors pursuant to Section 129 of the Municipal Act 2001, and whereas Property Standards Bylaw 2013-416 and the Permanent Signs on Private Property Bylaw 2016-326 set out certain regulations with respect to exterior lighting. And whereas residents have indicated concerns with light pollution affecting their use and enjoyment of their properties and homes that are not adequately addressed by the existing regulations. And whereas the new zoning regulations, which seek to increase urban density, light pollution may become increasingly problematic for both humans and wildlife alike. And whereas establishing clear standards for outdoor lighting will help mitigate these impacts, promote public health and safety, and protect local ecosystems while still allowing for appropriate illumination in urban spaces. And whereas other Ontario municipalities, including Mississauga and Richmond Hill, have bylaws to regulate light pollution, therefore be it resolved that staff include a light pollution bylaw or amendments to the property standards bylaw concerning light pollution and nuisance as an item for consideration as part of the development of next term of council's bylaw review work plan to be approved by council, and that other jurisdictions be considered as models as part of this work. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So that was a notice of motion, and we'll deal with that on our next meeting, which is June the 15th. Any other notices of motion? Seeing none, item 9 are inquiries. Any inquiries from any members? Seeing no hands, I don't believe we have other business. Before we adjourn, I just have a few things to share. So I'd like to highlight that Ottawa Fire Services will launch its biannual Wake Up campaign in June. As part of the campaign, uniformed firefighters will go door to door in select residential neighborhoods to test smoke and carbon monoxide alarms, replace batteries, and distribute fire safety information. Residents can visit ottawa.ca for more information on the Wake Up program. Our next committee meeting, as I mentioned, has been rescheduled to Monday, June 15th, 2026. Our agenda will include reports regarding the 2025 911 annual report, the 2025 Ottawa Paramedic Service annual report, and the licensing bylaw review and reenactment report. This will be followed the very next day by a joint meeting of this committee and the Environment and Climate Change Committee on June 16th, 2026 to receive a report from Strategic Initiatives and EPS on the Pilot Extreme Weather Preparedness Grant. And these two last back-to-back meetings will be our final meetings before we take a pause for the summer. Seeing today's business is now complete, we stand adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, Chair.